Miyo Saimori is the eldest daughter of the Saimori family, famed for her spiritual abilities, but she herself lacks them. Following the death of her mother, her father Shinichi marries his lover Kanoko, and has a second daughter, Kaya. Since her childhood, Miyo has been mistreated as a servant. Her only friend is Kuji Tatsuoshi, who is in love with her and hopes to rescue her by marrying her. Unfortunately, his father Minoru, desiring a more prestigious bride for Kuji, has him engaged to Kaya so he will one day become head of the Saimoris. To get rid of her in a way that makes her useful, Shinichi arranges for Miyo to be engaged with Kiyoka Kudou from the Kudou family, a notoriously bad-tempered soldier known to scare away potential wives within 3 days of meeting. Kuji is forced to accept as long as Miyo will escape her family. Miyo makes her way alone to the remote Kudou estate and meets Kiyoka's servant Yuri. Introduced to her fiancé, she is amazed at his handsomeness, yet Kiyoka is irritated by her passiveness, subservient manner, and low self-esteem. Yuri assures Miyo the rumors of Kiyoka's cruelty have been exaggerated. Miyo dreams of the day her father confirmed she lacked the Saimori spirit side and started neglecting her. Miyo prepares breakfast only for Kiyoka to callously assume she was sent to poison him. Kiyoka leaves to train his supernaturally gifted soldiers to kill demons called grotesqueries, though grotesqueries are so rare they have not fought one in years. Meanwhile, Kuji moves into the Saimori home and sees the tiny room Miyo used to sleep in. Back at the Kudou estate, Kiyoka notices Miyo's habit of apologizing for everything. Feeling guilty, he asks her to cook breakfast in the morning. Miyo dreams of her father allowing Kanoko to abuse her. Kiyoka praises her cooking and is perplexed when it makes her cry. Bemused by her behavior, he decides to have the Saimori family investigated. Later, Minoru is furious to find out Miyo is now engaged to Kiyoka, having previously agreed that Kuji would marry Kaya only if Miyo was allowed to marry his eldest son Kazushi, since her maternal relation to the Yusuba family makes her very valuable as a wife even without her spiritual powers. Kiyoka invites Miyo on their first date. Miyo has no idea what to do and simply tries to not be a bother. At the Saimori residence, Minoru is still furious to have lost Miyo's Yusuba bloodline for Kazushi's future children but is assured by Shinichi that once Kiyoka rejects Miyo, Kazushi can have her. Kaya is frustrated to overhear them still discussing Miyo, especially as she suspects Kuji's feelings for Miyo. Meanwhile, remembering Yuri told him about Miyo mending her own clothes, Kiyoka secretly commissions a kimono. Miyo decides to hide her lack of spiritual gifts in case Kiyoka abandons her. Kiyoka later gifts her a comb, despite Yuri's claim that a comb is a definite sign that he is making a proposal to her. The next day, an informant, Iwashimizu, shows Kiyoka the details of the investigation into the Saimori family. While disgusted by the blatant evidence of their abuse towards Miyo, Kiyoka also learns of her lack of spiritual powers in relation to the Yusuba family, who has the ability to manipulate people's minds. As he is about to return to Miyo, he destroys several shikigami, furiously discovering someone is spying on him. Miyo asks Yuri's help in giving a gift to Kiyoka. Yuri suggests something handmade, so Miyo chooses a kumihimo since Kiyoka always ties his hair with one. Kiyoka later gives her a protective charm. While shopping, Miyo encounters Kaya and Kuji. Kaya begins bullying Miyo until she learns Miyo is still engaged to Kiyoka. Elsewhere, Kiyoka visits the Saimoris and informs them they will receive none of the traditional benefits from Miyo marrying into a powerful family unless she receives a full apology. Kaya later briefly encounters Kiyoka and is struck by his beauty. Yuri informs Kiyoka of the incident and encourages him to give Miyo his unconditional love. When Kiyoka invites Hana over, a servant Miyo was close to as a child before she was unfairly dismissed by the Saimoris, Miyo is overjoyed to see her. She soon realizes Kiyoka must know her entire history, including her lack of spiritual talents, yet he wants to marry her anyway. Feeling very relieved, she gifts the kumihimo to Kiyoka, who promises he will never reject her. Miyo happily accepts the kimono Kiyoka bought for her. At the Tatsuoshi residence, Minoru shows Kaya the photo of Miyo and Kiyoka. Astonished, Kaya recognizes Kiyoka as a beautiful man. He informs Kaya that Miyo is actually getting along well with Kiyoka. As he had hoped, Kaya becomes jealous of the situation. Miyo invites Gado for dinner as a thank you for her reuniting with Hana. Unaware, she and Kiyoka were being spied on by Kaya's shikigami. Later, that night, Miyo has a nightmare and Kiyoka consoles her. Shinichi bluntly turns down Kaya's request to sever Miyo and Kiyoka's engagement, so she instead offers the suspicious Kuji a chance to marry Miyo as he wishes. Miyo forgets her protective charm while delivering a bento to Kiyoka and is kidnapped soon after. Kuji discovers what his father and Kaya are plotting, and becomes enraged that his father knew about Miyo's abuse but did nothing because her timid personality is better suited to his plans. Kuji attacks his father with his powers but is defeated and restrained. After Minoru leaves to deal with Miyo, Kazushi frees Kuji and encourages him to go help her. Miyo finds herself restrained in the Saimori storage room by Kaya and Kanako. When Miyo refuses to call off her engagement with Kiyoka, Kanako assaults her. Meanwhile, Kiyoka and Kuji head to the Saimori residence to rescue Miyo. After Kiyoka destroys a barrier cast by Minoru and Shinichi, Minoru attacks Kiyoka with his pyrokinetic power, which causes the residence to be set on fire. Kiyoka then strikes Minoru with lightning, rendering him unconscious. Once Kiyoka arrives in time to save Miyo, Kanako breaks down upon seeing the burning residence. Kaya approaches Kiyoka about being his fiancée, but he dismisses her due to her selfishness and arrogance. Frustrated, Kaya tells Kuji to leave her, but he refuses as he does not want Miyo to be tormented ever again. Elsewhere, the emperor is displeased over the Tatsuo's failure and grants Arata's permission to deal with Miyo and Kiyoka. Miyo wakes up to find Kiyoka by her side. Kiyoka reassures her that everything that happened was not her fault as he, along with a very relieved Yuri, is glad that she is safe and sound. Miyo requests Kiyoka to take her to the Saimori residence one last time. When they arrive there, Kiyoka informs Miyo that Shinichi and Kanako have moved to the house in the countryside and the Tatsuos are to blame, though the incident has not been revealed to the public. He also reveals Kazushi has replaced Minoru as the head of the Tatsuoshi family. Meanwhile, at the Tatsuoshi residence, Kuji tries to assure Kaya that they will rebuild the Saimori family, but she tells him off as she prepares to move to a strict household where she will be working as a servant. After Miyo thanks Kiyoka for rescuing her, they run into Kuji. Kuji informs Miyo that he will be leaving for his training in the old capital. Miyo and Kiyoka return home and make their engagement official. Sometime later, Miyo meets Kiyoka's older sister Hazuki, who becomes Miyo's tutor. That night, Kiyoka finds Miyo having another nightmare and deduces that it is the Yusuba ability. The next day, General Iketo informs Kiyoka about how someone has unsealed the gravestone containing grotesqueries. Elsewhere, Arata plans his next move. Kiyoka, Iketo, and Kazushi are given an audience with Prince Takahito, who reveals that the imperial capital will be invaded by the grotesqueries. Soon after, Takahito congratulates Kiyoka on his engagement with Miyo. Meanwhile, Miyo learns the Western etiquette for the upcoming party. After her lesson with Hazuki, she ponders over the meaning of family. As Kiyoka worries over Miyo's nightmares, he sends Iwashimizu to gather information on the Yusuba family. Later, Kiyoka meets the Ministry of the Imperial House's messenger Arata Tsuruki for a discussion about the investigation. That night, Kiyoka and his subordinates encounter the grotesqueries and destroy them. The next morning, Miyo encounters Arata when she suddenly collapses during her training day. Kiyoka quickly returns home to find Miyo resting with Hazuki by her side. He and Hazuki discuss Miyo and her connection to the Yusubas. Sometime later, Kiyoka is informed of the grotesqueries' attack on the civilians. Meanwhile, when Hazuki asks Miyo about her ideal life, Miyo replies that she wants to be with Kiyoka. Elsewhere, Kiyoka discusses with Iwashimizu the investigation of the Yusubas. Later that night, Kiyoka comforts Miyo over her loneliness and reassures he will be there for her. The next day, Miyo is visited by Arata, who comes to see Kiyoka, and is given an offer. After Kiyoka is put in charge of protecting the capital from the grotesqueries, he is confronted by Arata over his supposed treatment of Miyo. Kiyoka becomes shocked when he is told about her sudden collapse the other day. Soon after, Kiyoka receives information from Iwashimizu about a woman named Sumi Tsuruki, discovering that she had the same surname as Arata. He hurries back to find Miyo in the kitchen where she passes out in his arms. Kiyoka takes her with him while on his way to confront Arata. Kiyoka and Miyo arrive at the Yusuba mansion. There, Arata fully introduces himself as Arata Yusuba, Miyo's cousin. He explains that the cause of Miyo's nightmares is actually her spiritual gift. Kiyoka and Miyo are then introduced to the head of the Yusubas, Yashiro Yusuba. Yashiro offers Kiyoka his help if Kiyoka is willing to let Miyo stay with her maternal family. Yashiro explains that Miyo has the ability to intervene in a person's dreams and because of that, she will continue to have nightmares. When Kiyoka refuses to leave Miyo behind, Arata tells Kiyoka he should focus on the grotesqueries' impending invasion of the capital before he challenges him to a duel. Kiyoka has the upper hand until he is distracted by Arata's illusion of Miyo and loses the match. As a result, Miyo is taken under the care of her family. Despite his defeat, Kiyoka swears that he will get Miyo back once he deals with the situation. Back at the Yusuba mansion, Yashiro is about to tell Miyo about how her mother married the Saimoris and why she sealed away Miyo's spiritual powers. Yashiro explains that years before Miyo was born, the family business was in debt. When the Saimori family approached the Yusubas, they offered their assistance if Sumi married Shinichi, which Sumi accepted against Yashiro's wishes. As a result, she was estranged from her family. Yashiro also explains to Miyo her supernatural ability, the dream sight. When Miyo uses her powers, she discovers that her mother sealed away her powers to protect her from exploitation. Sometime later, Arata explains to Miyo about her duty as the maiden of the dream sight along with his duty to protect her. Meanwhile, Kiyoka and his subordinates fight off the grotesqueries. However, he becomes unconscious when he protects Kudou. The next day, after the sealing of Miyo's powers is lifted, she becomes shocked when she is informed of Kiyoka's condition. When she wishes to see Kiyoka again, Arata reveals to Miyo that the Emperor wants her to stay with the Yusubas permanently because of her existence and ability. Despite the consequences, Yashiro allows Miyo to leave and Arata takes her to Kiyoka. Miyo finds herself in the dream world of the Saimori residence. There, she confronts her other self. When Miyo's other self dissuades her, Miyo declares that she will not run away and promises that she will save Kiyoka. Soon after, using Kiyoka's Kumihimo as her guide, Miyo manages to find him in an endless battle against the grotesqueries. Elsewhere, the Emperor is informed of Miyo's attempt to rescue Kiyoka. When the Emperor tries to destroy Miyo and Kiyoka in the dream world, their combined power overwhelms and defeats him as the grotesqueries are destroyed. After Miyo and Kiyoka are awake, Arata reassures her that she is still part of the Yusuba family while Kiyoka tells him that they will have a rematch someday. The next day, Prince Takahito reveals to General Ikeda that the Emperor is responsible for releasing the grotesqueries from the gravestone while planning to have his father atone for his actions in the future. Miyo and Kiyoka return to their daily lives. Several days later, they both attended the party. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy this video.